Well, the UFC's first foray to Phoenix has come and gone. I think it's pretty safe to say it was a memorable one. Some close calls, controversy, some great fights, knockouts, a lot to discuss. And we are here with Phoenix's own Shaun Al-Shatti to break it all down. Of course, I'm Ariel Helwani. This is the UFC on Fox 13 post-fight wrap-up. And Shaun, we have to start with the main event. Of course, it was super close. In the end, JDS beats Stipe Miocic. Razor-thin decision, I thought. Who'd you have it scored for?
I actually had it scored 3-2 for Junior. I gave Stipe the first 2 rounds and then Junior the last 3 rounds. I wouldn't oppose the other way. I wouldn't oppose 48-47 for Stipe. I think it was maybe different in the arena because the crowd was a very pro-Junior crowd, so anytime he landed hard, the crowd really swelled, and it kind of created this environment of it. But yeah, it was a very, very good close fight.
Did Stipe do better than you thought he would?
He did, but also Junior just looked, I don't want to say, but he almost looked like a shell of his former self. It seems like it's sad to say, but those cane fights do seem like they've really taken a lot out of Junior. He seemed to be moving in quicksand throughout the early portions of the fight even.
And it makes me think about this week. Obviously, one of the hot topics of the week was Joe Rogan's conversation, if you want to call it that, with Brendan Schaub, where he was almost pleading for him to retire because of the damage he has taken. You look at JDS's face after this fight, after the cane fight, you have to start to think that this guy's taking way too much damage, right?
Absolutely, and it's worrisome. And, I mean, you watch this fight, and this fight was almost the same way. It wasn't nearly as lopsided as the cane fights, but you just watch, and it's brutal and it's visceral to see the amount of punishment these people, I mean, Junior and Stipe were taking. You worry about it. You worry. Junior's 30. Right now he looks like an old 30.
Yeah. His face was completely rearranged. Interesting, though, that I thought he lost the first 2 rounds and came back strong. I mean, he won definitely the 3rd and 4th. The 5th is maybe the controversial one, but for a guy to take that much damage but still come back strong at the end, I don't know what it says, but I think it's interesting to know.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing, I mean, it was the same Junior strategy, though. That was the frustrating part, is he kept talking this whole week about the evolution of his game, Outside of, like, he had that slick little trip in the 4th, but outside of that, he looked like the same Junior, kind of keeping his hands down occasionally, moving forward and back, only just looking for that one shot. I mean, he wasn't even throwing combinations this time. He was more or less looking for that one shot. Yeah, it's frustrating.
And at times it looked like he was looking for the home run shot, and he was swinging and at times whiffing as well. Do you feel like Stipe's stock has gone up a little bit? Is there a moral victory here for him?
I mean, his face doesn't say there was a moral victory, but yeah, I mean, you last 5 rounds with Junior, that's a moral victory. Right. I mean, nobody's really going to diminish Stipe's stock from this. So, I mean, that's something.
What do you do with Junior next?
That's tough. That's really tough. I think you should hold him out, like Dana said earlier. You should hold him out for a little bit because, again, the damage on this guy is just mounting. Even if he's not concerned about it, which he said in the press conference. I mean, I'm concerned about it for him, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But I think the time might be right to do a JDS over him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean.
That's interesting.
It's been building. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get that many more chances. And it seems like anytime Overeem wins, kind of opens up all this little treasure chest of possibilities of matchups that we can match up with. I think that's a fun one.
And we will get to Overeem in a second. I was thinking Travis Brown, who just won last week, because they're kind of both up there. But Overeem, JDS, of course, were supposed to fight for the belt. That would be interesting, definitely. Okay, let's talk about the co-main event. You picked Rafael dos Anjos to beat Nate Diaz in our preview show, but did you expect, honestly, that kind of a dominant performance?
I thought he would win, and I thought he would handily, but you're right. That was complete dominance. He mollywopped him up and down that cage.
Mollywop, great word, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was like we said, it was the takedown. It was the low kicks and the takedowns, and those low kicks especially were just brutal. You could tell halfway through the first round that Diaz was already hurting. It was uncomfortable to watch after a certain point because you could tell Dos Anjos was kind of stretching it out a little bit.
Is Diaz that far away now from the upper echelon of the lightweight division, or do you chalk this up to, I mean, the guy hasn't fought in 13 months?
It might be 2 things. I mean, Dos Anjos might be just that good. I mean, again, he has looked spectacular. He's 8-1 since 2012. He has wins over Cerrone, Diaz, and, I mean, that first-round knockout of Henderson. No one has a better resume than that. Maybe Khabib has a comparable resume because he has the win over RDA. But also, yeah, I mean, Nate Diaz this whole week was weird for Nate Diaz. Yeah. This whole entire week, there was a weird feeling around Nate Diaz. And you have to wonder what kind of condition he was coming into this. That didn't look like a full strength Nate Diaz, but again, maybe it seems like the division has figured him out. There's a blueprint on how to beat him, and guys are just using that now.
He's not one for excuses, but all that negativity has got to be exhausting, right? I mean, it's like a weight on his shoulders. Constant battle with the UFC, and you know, power to him. He's out there. He's outspoken. He's saying what's on his mind. But it would be nice to see him come into a fight and just not have any distractions, any negativity, any kind of drama, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the whole week again, it was strange. You missed Wednesday's open workouts. Right. Thursday, the entire hour was basically spent just saying every problem that he has with the UFC. Friday, he misses weight by such a large margin. It just wasn't set up for this to be his week.
Yeah, you wonder if he's almost, you know, just trying to get those walking papers. Yeah. But UFC President Dana White telling me afterwards he is still interested in being in the Nate Diaz business. So we'll see what happens there. Now we have this situation with Anthony Pettis. He wants to fight. He wants to remain active. Khabib, in many people's eyes, is the number one contender, but he's not ready to get back in there. He's coming off of ACL surgery. Do you think RDA has done enough to deserve that shot?
Absolutely. Like I just said, his resume is impeccable at this point. Aside from the Khabib loss, he has easily the best resume out of anybody in the division. And stylistically, that's a fun fight. I mean, the way that the RDA of tonight looked so completely, vastly different from the RDA that we saw in 2008. Yeah. That came in who was just a grappler. I mean, Rafael Cordero's a magician, man. Like he did the same thing with RDA that he did with Verdum, and I'm absolutely excited to see that fight. I mean, that's a fun stylistic matchup with Pettis.
And this is a guy who started off his UFC career 0-2, and just kind of was up and down afterwards. What they have done with him is nothing short of amazing. Let's get to Overeem. You brought him up earlier. He's back on track. He gets the finish that I think a lot of his fans have been clamoring for. What do you do with him? You think that fight is the fight to make, or do you think maybe a Mitrione fight is the fight he's going to get? What do you expect? You kind of weighed in on what you want, but what do you expect to happen next for him?
Overeem's interesting because he doesn't deserve a lot of the higher fights just based on his recent resume, but he's such an interesting character, and you know he's this big just Adonis, and everybody's interested in seeing him fight other guys. I mean, the JDS fight makes sense. The Mitrione fights make sense. Yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a rematch with Mark Hunt. That seems to make sense in a weird sort of like. I'd be interested to see that. Yeah, I mean, you have plenty of options for Overeem at this point.
And you know, I think it's worth mentioning, and I actually said this to him after the fight. After everything he's been through, Stefan Struve, to just get to this point, let's not forget, this guy was diagnosed with an enlarged heart, a leaking aortic valve. He got here, and I know he was disappointed and he wanted to win, but he's the youngest heavyweight in the top 15. He's 26 years old, which is amazing, and he's been doing this for almost 10 years. I expect, you know, maybe getting back in there, there were some cobwebs, but hopefully he can rebound from this. In a weird way, it felt like there was more pressure on Overeem's shoulders. Like, this was almost a situation where he was fighting for his career. Struve has a longer shelf life, you would imagine. So I think the guy who needed to win most won, if you know what I'm saying. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it seems like Overeem, again, every time he gets into this funk, we get sort of that narrative builds of, you know, he needs to win this. It seems like he staved off that retirement release. He's going to get cut talk for a while. And again, every time he wins, it opens up this little treasure box of matchups that we can kind of just pick and choose from. And yeah, Stefan Struve, like you said, he's the youngest guy in the whole entire heavyweight ranks. And it was such a long, drawn-out climb to get back to this point. If there is anything about moral victories, like you mentioned earlier, that's at least some moral victory, that he was able to get back, and now he's confident in his ability just to be able to fight again. That's something.
You know, prior to his fight against Czech Congo in 2011, I said that in 1 year's time, Matt Mitrione would be fighting for the UFC heavyweight title. Obviously, I was completely wrong. However, he is putting it all together here.
Yeah.
Did you expect this out of Mitrione? He finally gets that big win, and he's on a winning streak, but it was like he got the Congo fight, lost it. He got the Nelson fight, lost it. Got the Brendan Schaub fight, lost it. Now he gets a big opportunity on Fox. He wins. He does so in impressive fashion. Doesn't get hit at all. Did you expect this turnaround for him?
I mean, I picked him to win, but the way he won was far more decisive than I imagined. And like he said it all night, you know, he cut his teeth in the UFC. He has been in the UFC from the beginning of his career, basically. And yeah, I mean, it takes some guys some time to put this all together. He wasn't brought up in MMA. I mean, he came to this late. Yeah, it's fun watching him put everything together. I'm not gonna lie.
Who did you score the Claudia Gadelha fight versus, of course, Joanna Jacek? How about that?
Nice.
You like that?
Very
you
nice.
impressed? You impressed. I'm sure you're impressed. Who'd you score that fight for?
I had it 29-28 Claudia, but I don't argue with what they did. I mean, at this point, it seems I'm hopeful maybe that this is like a new trend of judges beginning to score damage, as opposed to control. Because I mean, it's the same thing with Robbie Lawler, same type of situation, and I'm not opposed to that. I mean, if that's what we're gonna go off of, I'm all for that.
And of course, last night, Carlos Esparza became the first ever UFC strawweight champion. Is that the fight to make? Double J versus Carla?
Double J. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do that whole name again. It's tough. I asked her if she's okay with Double J, and she is. So there you go.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, that's a fun fight. I'd really like to see that fight. I was really, really impressed with her takedown defense throughout tonight. I mean, stylistically, again, that really looks to be a fun fight.
So before we go, you're in your hometown. Pretty exciting stuff. Henry Cejudo, also from this part of the country. He picks up his first UFC win in his official debut. You also had Jamie Varner retiring, which was pretty interesting and somewhat out of left field. Some great performances. Anything else you want to touch on? Anything that stood out for you?
It was a really weird night. Yeah. It was a really, really weird night.
Was Derek Brunson didn't end up fighting?
The whole entire undercard was just a series of very bizarre things going on. And then in the arena, there was just constant fights going on in the crowd. Like, I don't know. I expected the Phoenix card to be weird somehow, because somehow things in Phoenix always end up being weird. Yeah. And it fulfilled my expectations, so that's good.
Of course, Sensei Segal in the house as well, overseeing.
What was going on with it? Why was that a thing?
That's a real thing. When he makes his presence felt, that's news in itself.
I don't like that we keep perpetuating this. We need to end this.
You want to put your foot down.
At some point we need to put the foot down, and I feel like
is it tonight? He is Arizona native, by the way.
I don't care. Who cares?
Wow, you're turning your back on a fellow statesman of yours.
I'm putting my foot down. This is the end for me.
Well, Charles Barkley was here. That was exciting.
He got the biggest pop of the whole entire night. We love Charles Barkley here. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. The Suns don't get very far very often. Sure. He took us. He took
second place is okay for you guys here apparently.
What about the Knicks?
What about the Knicks? On that note, we will say goodbye from Phoenix. A great night here. Phoenix has been clamoring for the UFC to finally bring a show here, and they showed up. The crowd showed up, great crowd, and it was bizarre, but it was certainly memorable. So we'll see when the UFC returns here in the near future. So that does it for us. Another busy weekend in the world of MMA. How about Husimar Palhares, by the way, beating John Fitch? Some late-breaking news from Sacramento, WSOF number 16. We'll recap all of that on the MMA Hour on Monday. And quick programming note, we'll be giving out our 2014 MMA Hour Awards. Writer of the Year, perhaps. Shaun Al-Shatti. How about that? No, I said perhaps. There actually isn't a Writer of the Year category. We don't do that sort of thing. But we have 19 categories total. We've got KO, sub, fighter, fight of the year, all that good stuff. So tune in Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, MMAfighting.com for the MMA Hour Awards. Cannot wait. That's it for my plugs. For Shaun, I'm Ariel. Thank you so much for watching our coverage. We will see you next time. Good night.